Well, it's my first time in Charters Towers.
Yeah.
It's quite lucky it's a bit mild. Probably
Yeah.
not getting the full experience.
You've hit the jackpot really, because
Yeah.
we're what, 26, 28 degrees, I
Yeah.
suppose. It's
No,
beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Plenty of campers about, and we're just on the edge of a national park here, and yeah.
We're right on the Burdekin River now. So this is your Burdekin.
Yeah.
It's your first time here. It looks like a nice, quiet little idyllic sort of river flowing past here, but when you see this place flooding and the water's right up over that bank there on either side, it's a mighty river.
Well, there's a fair change as you come up too. Like we've been through Rockhampton,
Yep.
through McGhie, through all the cane country, and now we're in this would be beef.
Yeah, all cattle country.
All cattle country.
Yeah.
And an old gold mining town with some gold mines still there.
Yeah. It was interesting when Judy and I went out there last night to this Milchester school reunion. It's because that's where Judy went to school, and the ex-mayor of the town here was there, Frank, and lovely guy. Got talking to him for a while, and he had to address the people there last night, and he just gave some of the past history of the town. And even for me, I've heard most of it in the past, but just to hear it, like brought up again, was just incredible. They brought out a couple of million ounces. Incredible the amount that they took out of here, and 30,000 people.
Yeah.
And 97 or 100 different pubs, hotels, in its heyday.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So a lot of history, rich history in here. It's a beautiful place.
Well, you've spent plenty of time in the towers, predominantly for guiding, and Judy's originally from here, and
yeah.
So tell us about what the history are being on the campaign trail for the deer. What's the history for the Chital deer?
Yeah, well, for me it's a special place because, literally I came up here, it would be probably 30 years ago, I suppose, or more, probably 35 years ago. And there was a couple of people that just started doing guided hunts on the Chital deer. And I came up and started on one property. I think I was on Nile Station for a start, and then I was there for a little while, and it just changed ownership. And I ran into the people on Bluff Downs, and I was, got started then on Bluff Downs, and I think I did 22 years or 23 years of guided hunts on there. So a lot of times through the towers here. We're trying to work out the other night how many hunters that we took through, and I think it was well over 400 hunters that I took through at that time.
Yeah. And what are the changes you've seen?
It's dramatic in the way of the deer, where we were saying at that time, and we wrote it down, we did a couple of property-based management plans for landowners and said, look, you've got to do something about the deer, because literally their numbers have got to a flash point where the numbers had got too high, and a lot of the old timers always felt that the deer would regulate themselves because they saw them do it a few times in the drought, where they a couple of times where there'd be a really bad drought and there'd be a few thousand deer would just go and die at the water holes because they'd stay there too long and the water would dry up and there was just too far to go to the next water, and they'd die in the thousands. So it's been like a natural die-off on the deer. But as they spread and then they hit the Burdekin River here and started going up and down the Burdekin, and it gave them that security of water, then they started to spread. And we were saying to them right at that time, this would be 25 years ago, we really do need to get some sensible management going, not just on one property or two properties, but on every property, people working together. And as human nature is, people wouldn't work together. We couldn't get people to work together. So what we saw then was really the boom of the deer numbers, and then we saw the period where it was just kill everything, and the choppers came in, the aerial shoots up here. There will be a figure on how many they took, but to me it was well over 100,000. Deer seemed to disappear. Judy and I and our team, we probably shot close to 10,000 ourselves.
Yeah, wow.
And that was where we were taking them for skins. trying to do something with them. We were looking at live capture, we were looking at live export, all this sort of stuff. And it just happened too fast.
Yeah.
We couldn't keep up with it. And it was literally, in the end, landowners were saying, just kill everything you see.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest changes. And the town's grown. Things like the camping areas and that have grown. You know, there's a lot more people come through here now, a lot more campers, a lot more tourists. Things have changed.
Was there much in the way of support to keep the deer here?
No, there's been, and I've said this not just on the Chital deer and the fallow or the reds, it's been the same right across the state. We have had zero support from government. Now they might say, oh no, we did this and we did that. Rubbish, rubbish. At the end of the day, they would not listen to the people on the ground. You know, when we said, look, there's so many people want to hunt Chital, you know, so many people, and we'd be taking guided hunts and charging, you know, $3,000 a hunt, and a lot of people just can't afford that. And it's a long way to come. It's a long way to get up here. So the prices were high, but it's like, when you look at it, if you have a few people and you've got to earn enough money to keep a business going, you've got to charge a lot for a few. If we could have got a lot of people involved, then the price can come way down because you can make the same amount by charging less. If you know, that makes sense. It's just like they call it like the grocery store mentality. If you can get enough people through the doors, your prices can come down. We couldn't really put enough back in landowners' hands then if there was only a few paying trophy hunters. And when I say a few, between all the guides, we might have had, you know, 50 to 100 paying clients a year, every year coming through. It might have been a bit more than that. But in the end of the day, you could only then pay a trophy fee of like $1,000, and we paid that every year right from day one, over 20 odd years, $1,000 a head back to the landowners as a trophy fee to them. But it still was small compared to what they saw the damage that they felt the deer were doing on their country, competing with cattle. And
I suppose there'd be a bit of competition there with their cattle in terms of what can be provided for value?
Yeah, well what we saw now, there's studies underway where they're saying they're looking to see whether the deer compete with cattle, and all very good, but they've got to be very careful how they set their parameters on that. And they can set out on a straight piece of cattle country somewhere and say, oh, how do they compete? What we saw, and probably the biggest problem a lot of landowners have, is if you lock up a paddock, so you want to put your weaners in, you've got your weaner cattle that you're just taking off their mothers, branding's done, inoculation, everything like that, and you've got those weaner cattle you're pulling off your mothers and you're quieting them down, getting them used to your horses and the dogs and the yards and all that sort of stuff. So usually when you're doing that with your cattle, you keep them around your house. You put them around the house in the house paddocks. And so before that happens every year, what you do is you spell those paddocks. You know, you pull all the cattle out, the horses, whatever, and you spell your close paddocks to the house. So they green up and they've got plenty of feed in there, so you can put your weaners in there and keep them quiet and work on them right next to the house. Well, you do that in Chital country, you spell a paddock, you rest a paddock, and you will have 1,000 deer arrive in there.
Yeah, okay.
So the damage that they can do is escalated, it's multiplied, because they'll say, whoa, that's beautiful green pick in that paddock, and in they'll come. So there was a lot of resentment towards the deer because they do love to live around
Could you say there's a bit
houses.
Could you say there's a bit of a broad perspective around competition?
Yeah. So some landowners have they think it's nearly 1-to-1. Oh, one deer eat as much as a cow. Rubbish. Nowhere near it. I think it's more in the 15 to 20 deer to a cow. But still, if you've got 2,000 Chital deer on your place, that's the same as 100 head of cows, right? And if you're growing a crop, and I say to people, if you want to see competition, you go and grow a crop of lucerne or oats or whatever up here.
A lot of Leucaena up here.
Yeah, Leucaena in paddocks, right?
Yeah.
But if you go and grow a crop and you want to hold it for your cattle, so you're growing it, you're getting it out of the ground next to where deer are, and they just go straight through your cattle fences.
Yeah.
Now, we've had the people say, oh, the landowners should put deer-proof fences in. well, why should we put a deer-proof fence in and go to all that expense for your recreational activities? You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know,
Well, then, maybe there's, I mean, with the Ridge Group, being a part of the Ridge Group and doing the campaign we're doing, I guess the question arises, well, what's the, for lack of a better term, happy medium that we could find, especially with 20 years of experience here?
well, that's what we were trying to do with our guiding, I suppose. If we could put enough dollars back to the landowners, keep the numbers down, and like on Bluff and that, we were shooting probably 1,000 females a year at one stage there, trying to keep their numbers down. So if you could keep them in a nice level, get the stags out that you could see that were poor genetic, keep your genetic quality up, keep your numbers down, keep your sex ratios close as you could, keep the wild pigs and that sort of stuff down as well. Well, then the landowners would tolerate them and say, no, they're pretty good, pretty good. What I'd love to have seen on a few of those properties was more strategic fencing where we could actually grow crop. You know, they could grow crop for their cattle, hay and whatever, without the deer impacting on it, because that really tainted the whole thing.
Yeah.
So by bringing in hunters, paying some money to the landowners and helping to keep the management there, we were aiming for that middle ground where it was the deer would be accepted to stay on. But things have changed. The deer have shifted and we couldn't get enough people. Like even here, we've just driven through a camping area up here a while back. We drove around there. How many campers?
Oh, be upwards of 50.
Exactly, yeah. And this isn't it isn't packed.
No.
Most of the campsites aren't packed.
There is plenty of room, I will say that, for a camp.
Yeah, beautiful conditions, lovely place to camp. But for years we've seen it here, that people would come down here to, especially this Fletcher Creek, you know, I don't mind saying it, this Fletcher Creek camping area, and they'd grab a campsite, leave mum and the kids in the campsite, and they'd be gone before daybreak with their rifle or their bow to shoot a deer. And that's what they did. The poaching out of this area was notorious. It was legendary.
Yeah.
That happened here. Mainly bow hunters. A lot of bow hunters are going across the road and whatever. And you've seen on the way up here the response to bow hunters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, where'd we stop? I think we went through a place called Serena on the way through, and we bumped into a landholder, great woman, and just getting to hear some of her perspective about bow hunters and, you know, to put it broadly, never seen as many wounded animals. And look, I would personally see that as putting it down to, look, bow hunting I don't think is a bad thing, but there's no best practice. There's no approach that everyone can get behind.
Yeah, there are, but they're not out there. They're not enforced. So what we saw here was, instead of being bow hunters, we had people that were using the bow to be able to quietly poach deer. So they weren't true bow hunters. They were opportunists.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so, and a lot of those guys did not have the ethic that I see in true bow hunters. Like the best bow hunters I know are so clean and so ethical, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But I think we've got a fringe fraction that have come into that, and that's actually done more harm than good. But we've seen that, you know, she nearly spat on the ground talking about bow hunters, because they've people just getting dropped off, going into the country and poaching. Yeah. Yeah. But same with the rifle here, we've had a lot of it. So
well, and sorry, looking at the area and stuff, I mean, it would be quite dangerous to be bringing a rifle into here and poaching.
Well, yes and no. A lot of the fellas that are the true poachers that I've run into, they are probably so clinically sort of calculating and clean on it that you hardly even hear them fire a shot, fire one shot. But it's more the bogan.
Yeah.
You know, I hate saying it, I love the whole bogan character of Australia, but it's more the bogan that was down here, way away from anybody, thinking there's no cops or anybody to watch me, so they're on the grog and they've got a gun out and they're shooting at things.
Yeah.
That's where our problem is coming from.
Yeah. It's
the guys that won't just follow a sensible set of rules.
Yeah, and that comes with a lot of apathy from the hunting community.
Yeah. Well, here, look at it. You could be here, four-wheel driving up here, fishing, camping with the family, and literally nobody is going to pull you up. Yeah, and people have done this for generations now, and says that's our right. We can do that, and we don't give a damn, and we'll do what we want. That's all good, but what happens in the end is then the authorities, they get to the stage where they feel they have to crack down on us, and what they do then is that they dump on everybody hard. They lock the whole place up. Or like now, they get to the point where it's like, just shoot the deer.
Yeah.
And we're giving them the excuses. Like to me, we're giving the authorities the whip to flog our own backs with. And I say to people, stop doing that. We need to take control of the whip hand ourselves instead of giving it to government and say, here, beat me.
Yeah.
And I change of attitudes.
I think a lot of the attitudes would change in the hunting community if they just spoke to a few people and realised that they'd be right behind them if they got behind something like what we're trying to do. A proactive approach rather than allowing, a lot of the changes, speaking about the industrial manslaughter stuff, a lot of those changes are coming in, and rather than us taking a proactive response, it gets dictated back to us about what we should do. And I don't think we should wait anymore for that to happen, especially with examples like South Australia. They've got the problem, but there's no strategy that can be put into place.
I'm sick of the can being kicked down the road. Really am. I've seen my whole life has been involved in the hunting, the guiding, capture, farming of deer. And I love it. And I love seeing people out here. Like, you see people camping here and the kids having a swim in the creek, in the river here and all that. Nothing better. Catching a fish, respecting it. This is the Aussie way of life. 100%, 110% for it. But we've kicked the can along the track thinking, they'll never clamp down on us. And what we're seeing is the authorities, whoever they are, and I see it as the people that are the woke mob that think that they know better than us, the people that are more, how would you say, elitist, that really do think that we are just the plebs, we are the chiselers that really don't know what we need. They're quite happy to dictate to us and say, here, this is what you can have. So the rules that they want to dish out to us are not going to be acceptable. We're seeing that with the other states. That is what gives me encouragement and puts the fire in my belly to get around and try and talk to people and do things, that we have got something here now. We have looked at it, the Ridge as a group, and we've had so many great people through there assisting us over the years, everybody doing their bit. And I suppose Judy and I have been the crash test dummies where we've had to test this thing out, and we've tested it out. And I feel that the system that we've got there now is something we've just got to give across to people somehow and say, look, people, it's like, I say, like a game of football. If everybody adopts the same code of practice and the same set of rules, we can have a great competition. We've got the Cowboys playing the Broncos and whatever else like that. It's all the different teams can all compete against each other on a fair, level playing field because everybody agrees on the one code of practice. What we've had for too long is one code for this and one code for over there, so you don't know, like the rules in Victoria are different to the rules in New South Wales, which are completely different to Queensland rules. I'd love to see a system similar to New South Wales, but I don't think they've got it right. And they might hate me for saying it, but I hate the thought of going into state forest areas and just kill everything you see. Because what you're going to end up with is people going in there with thermals and all the rest of it, or somebody just going in thinking, gee whiz, I'm in here today and there's this beautiful young stag, but if I don't shoot him, the next person will. So bang, he gets shot. So there's no management.
Yeah.
It is all just downhill.
Yeah, and we refer to hunting as a hunting community. Yeah. And we have to embody that. If we're to understand, we all want to hunt deer and we all want to see them thrive.
Yeah.
I mean, the opinion from government isn't that, and we have to recognise that. But most hunters do want that virtue to be well and alive.
Yeah.
What's a better way to foster that community into a direction where we can get away from that?
Well, I think that's what we're striving towards. I think that's what we've got here. We can put out like a basic set of rules and say, listen guys, what say we look at adopting this style of thing. Now, it might have to have changes or whatever. We get that code of practice where we say we're all happy to abide by that, right? We can stand on that and hopefully get politicians to back us up and say, okay, right, well, those guys are being responsible. That's best practice. Get behind us so that we can get solid rules set in place. Look, I'm not against the chopper shoots, not at all, okay? There's places here where that's the only way. Well, you've seen when we came up here, the chonky apple, the Chinese apple, and the lachina, the wild lachina, the bellyache bush, the castor oil bush, all that, it is just out of control.
You couldn't climb a hill.
Yeah, I've seen the change. Like coming up through from Townsville, how many 100 times have I driven through over Harvey Range or through to Townsville from the towers and whatever over the years, and I've just seen it change in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
Like over that period of time, it's like a lot of those hills now, you can't climb them.
Not at all.
You'd be just battling through the worst vines with big hooks on them that you've ever seen. Now, it's just a haven now for the pigs and the deer. So in some places, there's no other way than that they can see than doing that. If we had a market for the animals, a live animal market like we used to have, we'd be capturing those animals. And it's a lot easier to get them in if you put a crop in and draw them out with a little bit of love and kindness, and you can catch them if there was a market. But government's policy has been no commercialisation. They've only given one route to go down, and that's kill them, kill them, kill them. Kill them to their lowest possible number. Now, they've avoided the word eradication. We've used the word eradication probably more than they have because they've been careful to channel the rhetoric, okay, by them saying we just want control. But when you read into it, control to them is reduced to the lowest possible number. And they say control them in times of drought, after big fires, when they're under stress, all this sort of stuff, and kill everything. Okay, so that's not sustainable use management.
No. You look at the National Feral Deer Strategy, they address recreational hunting, but they don't recognise it as a management tool.
They don't see us as being effective.
No.
Because they said, we basically haven't got any system. And that's what we're saying now. If we can adopt a system and get people to adopt a system, we should be able to get in there and say, hey, whoa, hang on, we can have a very good effect. Use us at it when the deer are down to a certain level. Like if the deer can be kept at a certain level, hunting can keep them at that level. Right? When they're literally not out of control, but their numbers are way over the top, over that maximum viable population, righto, something drastic has to happen. But we're putting out the hand of friendship and the olive branch to government. We've been doing for a lot of years saying we want to meet middle ground here. We want to have sustainable management, not unsustainable management. And literally every time you put the hand out, you get bitten.
Yeah.
It's been probably my biggest gripe. And unless you accepted that pest rhetoric, then there was no funding, there was no support, there was nothing for anybody unless you were accepting their way. Their way or no way, it's been. There's been no middle ground.
Do you think a lot of the pest rhetoric's being adopted just so that there's more opportunity for access? Or
Yeah. A lot of hunters, a lot of people that see themselves as hunters have grabbed that pest rhetoric to think that they're going to get access. And that's short term. That's very good. Yeah, real good. But it's not going to get you anywhere.
No.
It's going to wipe it out. Maybe not wipe the animals out. A lot of people say, McGhie, they'll never wipe them all out. I agree.
Yeah.
But I'd probably kill more deer than most people.
Yeah. Right?
And you can get 80% of a herd fairly easy. It's the 80-20 rule. You can get 80% pretty easy. The last 20% is going to really take a battle to get rid of them. But in most areas, if we lose 80% of the deer, we lose the whole recreational hunting industry.
And it's not as if the choppers stop after that point.
No.
There might be 20% left, but every time they poke their heads out.
Yep.
So that means in turn, if we keep this short-sighted approach going, they'll never pop their heads out. They'll never have good quality. They'll never be able to come to a point where they can be a resource.
Yep.
And it's already coming into focus, but kids won't be able to hunt. You won't be able to teach those methods.
Very few people will have gun licenses, and that's what we're seeing here in Queensland, with no specific legislation around it. People think they're hunters, but we say to them, get and look at the legislation and show me where hunting is mentioned. And with a very few, few places it's mentioned. You know, if you're Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, you can hunt. People of all other ethnic backgrounds cannot legally hunt.
Yeah.
We can pest control. That's all that they've given us.
Well, the question for most hunters that I hear, because working with Ridge, we get our members through, we have a lot of questions come through from the general public. The main thing here, what can we do? And the reality here is, because of the amount of groundwork that you've done and over 30 years has been laid out there, there's not much that needs to change in the way of legislation.
We don't need much of a change at all.
No, not at all.
A couple of little things, but what we do need is hunters to stop being so apathetic.
Yeah.
You know, she'll be right, mate. No, I'm right, I'll go down, I've always done this or whatever. It's time for the hunters and the shooters of this state to literally stand up and be counted. You know, and that's what gets me. Most of them say, yeah, we're behind you, and then they're gone.
Crickets. Yeah.
You know, that's probably the biggest gripe I would have. And even when it comes down to like the researching, we're seeing even with the unis and all the rest of it, their hands are tied. A lot of them want to help. They want to get out there and do it. But unless they follow the Pest Rhetoric, the government laid out rhetoric, they don't get any funding.
Moving forward, the strategy of sustainable use it'll help the deer, but it does help wildlife. It does help the general management of wildlife. It helps bring into focus some of those responsibilities that landholders deal with day to day. So if you can talk a bit about what sort of changes, maybe in positive light, that we've had towards that.
Well, what the basis of our system is a property-based wildlife management plan. Now, most landowners have got a property-based plan under their LPA system. So it's their workplace health and safety, their fire, their chemical usage, cattle, NLIS, all the rest of it comes under that. What we have targeted is the property-based wildlife management plans. Now, that concept was brought here by Brian Murphy from QDM, and that was 35 years ago. Brian, fantastic guy, got it established in Tasmania. It was then sort of taken a bit further by Dr. Graham Hall. We had it right from the early days with Brian Murphy. I think I've got one of his original property-based wildlife management plans there, a copy of it from Tasmania. And we set that in place. So that's all wildlife. So you look at it and you think, well, if we're going to do this and it has an effect on that, well, then we've got to change how we do this part of the plan so we don't affect that. You know, or righto, if we're going to control, say we're controlling the dingoes, we expect that the wild pig numbers are going to come up. So if you're going to hit the dingoes hard in an area, trap or whatever, you must be prepared to do the pigs at the same time. Okay, if you get the dogs down, your deer are going to come up. So there's all these, interrelated parts that go into that property-based wildlife management plan. If we could see more of that adopted by landowners, where they would look on a broad scale on their thing and say, okay, well, by keeping the trees and the habitat there for the deer, as we have seen in some areas, landowners said, no, we love the deer, we're going to keep that as it is. Well, that then has all those positive benefits back on the native wildlife. We've seen in some areas there, all the little creatures come back because we're killing the cats, keeping the dog numbers, the wild dog numbers down, the cats down, and foxes down, and the habitat is left there for the deer. The deer hunters are funding the whole lot, and all of a sudden all the antechinus and the fuscigales and the koalas and nasutas, everything come back.
Yeah.
Everything comes back. So it's, there's a lot more that can be shown that we can do in that area.
Yeah, and that harkens back to hunters as conservationists.
Best conservationists of the lot.
Yeah.
I've always said that, and a lot of people say the same thing. Your hunter is the true conservationist, but he doesn't get recognised. And what we'd probably say, hunters, too many people have been thrown into that same basket. And we've got people that say, oh, I'm a hunter, and no, mate, you're a bloody road shooting, sign shooting, drunken, fool.
Yeah.
A lot of people take offence at that, but there's a lot of people out there that do that, and they call themselves a hunter. go, no, mate, you're not a hunter.
Yeah.
And then other people that, just simply shoot holes in tin cans and pieces of paper and might go out and shoot one animal a year and they say, I'm a hunter. No, you haven't really embodied. I'm not trying to be holier than thou or better than this or whatever. But hunters get blamed for a lot of things that go on.
Yeah.
Hunters, somebody shot holes in that road sign. Look at that one back there we saw was just peppered with bullet holes. Right? Oh, a hunter's done that. No, it wasn't a hunter at all. Anybody would do that is not a hunter.
No.
And we see places there where there's some of the native wildlife has just been shot and left. That's not a true hunter. That's not a hunter at all. So we've got to be careful how we get pigeonholed into areas where we shouldn't be.
Hunting comes with an ethical background, and it has for a long time.
Yeah, forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
And with ethics comes having to understand the bigger picture and understand the consequences and the outcomes. So with the way we're looking at it today, the pest controlling, I would have to say that some of that isn't as ethical as it might seem.
A true professional is pretty ethical, pretty clean, on that. Very, very professional. That's why they call it professional. People that pose as pest controllers to get access, they're really in there for their own gain because they want to get that head, they want to get the meat, they want to have the experience. They're lying. And that's as basic as that. They're lying to get access.
Yeah.
Call themselves a pest controller. A lot of times the ethics go out the window to get there, right? Because they're already working under a lie. So I'm saying to people, we need ground in Queensland where we've got legislation or mention in legislation or changes in regulations where true hunters can be recognised as true hunters and they can have the ethics and the morals and the decency that they have and hunt, right, and be recognised for that. Because at the moment, it's not recognised. That's one of the biggest things I'd like to see change. I'd like to see a recognition of the cultural significance of true, fair income recreational hunters. Working ethically, with morals, with humanity, with decency.
Yeah.
In the Aussie bush.
And I think looking at the legislation as it stands, it's a bit discriminatory. What is written, especially in the Animal Care and Protection Act, because we recognise one small group of traditional management, which is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, whereas we don't recognise every Australian.
Exactly. That's the most discriminative thing I've seen in legislation. It's blatant discrimination against most of the people in the country in favour of two groups. And when we talk to the traditional owners we've talked to already, they've all been against it themselves. They said, that's ridiculous. If we've got the right to hunt, you've got the right to hunt. But they're all, again, saying that there's got to have some rules here. We've got to have some, a code of practice.
A framework.
So I think we've got huge support for that right across the country. But it's something that people have just let go. And the powers that be have seen that it's been, because we're not prepared to stand and fight on it, that they'll just push it through.
Well, I think it's time to challenge that apathy that hunters have, because everywhere we're going, we're getting really good support. Whether it be from Shooters Union, landowners, or just someone on the street who asks a question.
Everybody. Exactly. How many people have come up to this vehicle as we go along and just, say, g'day, mate. Fantastic. But a lot of work to do. We better get on the road and get done.
Think so.
Do it.
Give it a go.